Hi guys, I'm just going to get this started. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay, perfect. My name is Stefani, and I like to draw what people say. So I'm going to take this morning to talk a little bit about sketch notes and some of the different tools and techniques that you can use to make them yourself. Hopefully I will create a room full of avid sketchnoters by the end of this talk. For those of you who don't know, sketch notes are just regular notes in a more visual form. They're a little bit more dynamic, and they can be used to use for information grazing versus taking someone through a more linear path like a video or a slideshow might. Sketch notes are great because doing them, so taking notes by hand can prolong the retention of information in your brain, which is awesome, as well as it practices your ability to synthesize ideas in real time, making connections and identifying themes in the moment. So I'm going to take you through the 5 main building blocks of sketch notes and then some of the best practices that go into them. The first building block we're going to talk about is obviously text. So while text can contribute a lot to the informational structure of your sketch note, it also can contribute to the visual portion as well. Playing around with font size and styles, as well as any hand lettering that you might do, can really contribute to that visual sense. In addition to that, you can add graphics and or icons, drawings, and art. This does tend to be the most intimidating component for a lot of people, but we are a room full of creatives, so it should totally be fine. Graphical representations can really encompass a concept very succinctly and in a really interesting way. In addition to that, you're going to have a lot going on your page, so you want to consider how you're going to delineate different concepts, ideas, and comments that you make. So you really want to make use of boundaries, containers, borders, and things like that. This will help identify which ideas kind of link up together and which are maybe not so directly related to one another. And it's really all about just sort of clear communication to your viewer about what they should connect. In addition to that, you want to add in some connectors. So with the fluidity that's allowed in a sketch note, you can't really rely on the top to bottom, left to right reading structure in traditional notes. So you really want to take advantage, oh, we can't see anything. You really want to take advantage of connectors. Visualize some connectors in your mind, arrows and things of that nature to take them through a path. The last part is color and shading. So this offers the most benefit with the least amount of work. Color makes things pop, it adds contrast, and can pull attention to certain areas. So one thing to keep in mind, with those 5 building blocks, before you really put anything on the page, you want to consider what your underlying structure is going to be. So it could be columns, it could be quadrants, it could be some sort of like mind map or something. But you also want to consider maybe how many speakers there are or how much time you have during that talk, and use that information to break up your page into smaller, more manageable pieces so you don't run out of space, or, so you don't run out of space. While the person is talking, you're going to be actively writing while also actively listening, so you really need to exercise your mental cache. Think of your brain as if it's a funnel, and you want to fill it up with a couple of minutes of ideas and then pull out the ideas and the concepts that most resonate with you and put those down. It's sort of like circular breathing for your brain. When you are taking sketch notes, you should definitely accept that you're not going to get everything. So that's okay. You're not transcribing, you're sketchnoting. So you should be very comfortable with the idea of letting certain concepts sort of pass you by and just grabbing the ones that you feel are the most important and that you feel are worth writing down. In addition to that, you really want to remember that you're not making art, you are communicating an idea or a concept. So a big barrier for sketchnoting is people don't think they're going to look cool. That really just comes with time and practice, but as long as your sketch note communicates that idea or that experience clearly, you should consider it to be very successful. One thing that you should do in a sketch note is make sure that your personality and your perspective comes through, right? So again, this isn't a transcription, right? This is a synthesized translation of your experience in a visual form. So your style and the way you draw will reflect you a little bit as well, but you should definitely feel comfortable adding the comments or commentary that you might have in that sketch note. It makes it more human and a lot more fun to look at. And then finally, you do want to come with the tools that you are most comfortable with. So you're going to be trying to do a lot in at one time. And so not having the tools that you are comfortable with is just going to create another barrier and something that you have to deal with. So that is the 4.5-minute summary of how to sketchnote. What I think would be really fun, since we have 3 more speakers coming up, is if everyone pulled out their pen and paper right now and took a shot at one of the next speakers. So jot down a sketch note, hopefully 1, 2, or 3, and then before you leave, if you want to take a picture of it with your phone, upload it to Twitter with the hashtag #CMSketchnote, and as a group we can kind of see what kind of visualizations that we come up with. I think that's all I have. Kim said I'm allowed 2 questions, so if there are any questions, you can go ahead and ask those now. Or if that was like really comprehensive, then that's totally fine. Yes?
Yeah, when did you start sketchnoting and what was the process for you?
So the question was, when did I start sketchnoting and what was the process for me? I have a product design background, so I've always sort of been doodling in my notes for the last 15 years. It wasn't until probably about 5 years ago when I started making them into compositions themselves. It was really trial and error. It's a relatively new field, and while there are a lot of resources available now, books and videos and things like that online, it was definitely sort of a self-taught process of making a lot of really ugly sketch notes and then getting to something a little bit more nice looking.
Are you familiar with the book Back of the Napkin?
I am, and I actually support the book, what is it, Sketchnote Workbook, more than the Back of the Napkin. I think there's sort of 2 kind of visual thinking and visual communication. There's the rapid concept and something that you're trying to talk to a group of people and talk through. I think Back of the Napkin is great for that, whereas the sketchnoting is really you sort of synthesizing and not necessarily working as a group to communicate something. So Mike Road, who's out of Milwaukee, he just published a book called Sketchnote Workbook, and that sort of talks about the sketchnoting versus communal communication at the same time. Thanks. Is that okay?
My name's Sandy Weisz. I'm the commissioner of the Mystery League. We put on live social puzzle hunts. I'm going to tell you a little bit briefly about what it takes to put one of these things together. Puzzle Hunt is a game. It's about 3 hours long. It takes place at a park or a library or a museum or a neighborhood. And the way it works is you're put on a team, you're given a map or a passport or a guide of some kind that has the locations of puzzles in it. And you go to those locations and you solve the puzzles. Puzzles can be anything from putting together Lego pieces to form some sort of shape, or looking for cryptic messages in art, or following a poem around the zoo. When I start one of these things, it's just like any other creative endeavor when I'm trying to create something out of nothing. It's a cage match between my procrastination and my creativity, and my procrastination will always win unless I set a deadline. And so the very first thing I do is I define the date of the event and the location and the theme, and that's it. And I send out little time bombs in the form of invitations. And that way people have made plans. People are coming from out of town. There's no getting around it. I have to get this done. Sometimes it's just 5 weeks before the event, but now I've got to do it. This is the only way. And I do this every time. After that, I can start thinking about the hunt itself. And the first step there is to just absorb, to walk around the place where the hunt's going to be and look for information, whether it's signs or books with interesting stuff in it or engravings. Information is the key here, because puzzles are really, at their core, converting one kind of information into another, so I have to start with the information that's available. This is especially true at places like the Art Institute, where there's no way that I'm going to be able to manipulate the environment at all. So all I'm allowed to do is use the information that's available to me and to the teams by walking around. After I get all the information together, I write it down, and I put it together. I put it up on pin boards. This is the homosote, by the way. I put it up on pin boards. I put it up on note cards and pin them up, and that allows me to externalize the information and allow my brain to be freed up for making connections. What puzzles work well with what places, with what solutions, with what constructs. That is when the puzzle making part truly starts to begin. And the key there is to think laterally, which is really all that means is looking at, for example, a box of cereal not as a box of cereal, but rather a box of patterns and words and shapes and colors, or a recipe not as an instruction sheet, but as an encoded message. Or it means looking at something like the big cat house at the zoo and noticing that some of the cats can be added together like their numbers if you think of them not as animals, but as operating systems. Or it means thinking about book covers of famous books and thinking of them not as book covers, but thinking of them as possible Photoshop jobs where you can treat them as where they can reflect the title with one letter missing. So it's a heartbreaking walk of staggering genius or a clockwork range. And then when you take those letters that are missing together, you get Dorothy. Which is the answer to this puzzle. Or it means looking at music, not as music, but products of artists whose names have single letters, and whose single letters, when you take them together, spell out the name of a country. Or it means offering up a poetic challenge by asking teams to go into the children's library and finding books whose spines can be cobbled together to form a poem. That's Billy the Condominium with a very fortunately or unfortunately placed label. And then last, of course, I have to prove that all this works. I make plenty of puzzles that are good in concept but are terrible in execution, like this one, pick the odd one out. Well, the answer is supposed to be, obviously, right? Obviously the good, the bad, and the ugly, because it's the only one that's not a complete sentence. But it could easily be the one that's all in the lowercase, or the one that doesn't have any people in it, or the one that has only 2 actors on it. So you got to test these things.
Something on this carrot week.
And of course, sometimes they get it exactly right, and this is the puzzle maker's favorite moment.
Oh, even this very not
So I've been doing this for about 8 years as a hobby, and when I started out, I made a lot of mistakes. I mean, the puzzles were terrible. They were too long, they were too hard, they were too insane, but I kept at it, and I kept honing my skills using these methods, and now they're really fun, and now I'm making a business out of it, so thanks. All right, I have time for 2 questions. Yeah, go ahead.
How do you maintain difficulty? Not make it too hard to maintain.
Yeah, that's a great question. So he asked, how do I maintain the difficulty? I didn't for a long time. Okay, so I've done puzzles for about 8 years. For the first 5 or 6 years, I didn't test. Even though I say it's a core tenet, I only learned that lately. So test it. So test it and make sure, test it with someone who's like who's like average puzzle skill and make sure they get things. But also the answer is I put these on for people of lots of different skill levels, and you have to make puzzles that work for all levels. And the way to do that is to build teams. I didn't make a point of it, but there's every puzzle hunt you're on a team of people, so hopefully it's a broad range of skills. But also, I don't make any illusions that everyone's going to get every puzzle on their own, so I offer hints for free throughout hunts, always. Because people are there to have fun, not to be convinced that they're not smart enough, which can happen if the puzzle's too hard. So the hints are there if you're stuck. So it's not so much about honing the difficulty level, but making it accessible to everyone. Go ahead.
This is so awesome. How did you get into this line of work?
Well, it's adorable that you call it a line of work. I started, I've been into puzzles. Oh, so she asked, how did I get involved? How did I get into this line of work? I've been doing puzzles for my whole life, and I was into Games magazine. So my dad put on a puzzle hunt for me for when I was 10, and it was like this mystery of, so my dad was into it, and he put on this puzzle hunt for me when I was 10, and it was about like, I don't know, some elaborate thing, I can't remember. I recently found the documents that he had written up. It was like one of these murder mysteries where people were given, like, adults were given characters to like to absorb and like play the character out as part of this like really long story. I recently found the documents that everyone had to read. They were 26 pages long. So I inherited it genetically. And then I went to summer camp and I put on some puzzle hunts, smaller scale puzzle hunts at summer camp, and then for all my 20s, I really didn't do anything. I was like, I really want to put on a puzzle hunt. So when I was about to turn 30, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. And so I just, like I said, I sent out the invitation, and then I was like, I got to do it. And then I did it, and then it was terrible. I mean, it was terrible. Like, no one finished. That's a long story. I'll tell you afterwards. And then I just kept doing it. And then I said, oh, this will make a business. And then Kim invited me to speak. So. Thank you. Thank you.
So hi, I'm Julie. I'm a copywriter. But before that, I spent 10 years teaching history, journalism, and sex ed to middle schoolers. When I told people I taught middle school, they typically grimace and ask me why. And I would say that I really liked it, and I was good at it, and I was going to do it forever. But then I got married, and I had a kid, and I started to wonder about the other things I might be good at or the other lives I might live. I'm not alone in my leap. One study says folks under 40 might have as many as 10 jobs in their lifetime. In the next few years, nearly half of us will start working on our own or work in alternative situations. We don't start jobs and stay there forever. We iterate. We start our own businesses and we go out on our own. If we're going to go out on our own, we're in an exceptional situation to claim skills as we go. The longer I've lived in this world, the world of clients and copy and design and briefs, the more I've realized the power of transferable skills. Those things we do in one area of our life that are adaptable and applicable in other areas of our life. I think a lot about the things I got from teaching and how they help me now. So I want to give you 3 lessons I got from teaching. The first thing I'd say to anyone, anywhere, is to lead with empathy. Middle school is a time where bodies are changing, brains are being bathed in hormones, and kids are in a constant struggle between autonomy and dependence. Their parents are confused and worried. They feel shut out, so they wig out. Do you guys remember how annoying your parents were in middle school? Yeah? Well, clients are like anxious parents, especially small business and startup clients. This thing is their baby. They've spent time arguing about its name. They've spent a ton of time and money on it. They've worried about it. And there's a lot riding on its success. You've been brought on board because you can do something they can't do. In middle school, that's to get the boys to take baths. Here, it's to brand, build, or launch. Anxiety breeds crazy. Demands get absurd. Scopes get crept. We have to speak hard truth sometimes and tell clients there are limits to what they want and to what their little baby can be. It gets messy. When I work to remember there's a person there behind the scenes and I don't just let myself seethe, I remember there was a person worried about their kid and whether he fit in. So I get further when I start from a place of empathy. We can also then lead with our expertise. I taught over 1,000 middle schoolers, and there wasn't much that surprised me by the end. Every kid is a special snowflake, but there's some kind of combination and permutation of learning profiles, personality, that helped me navigate that landscape. That whole year landscape then patterned beautifully with the parents' expertise, their whole kid lifetime. I could give a specific context to the kid's year, offering clarity to the parent, and the parent could help me understand the origins and journey specific to that kid. And it's the same with writing. I've written more websites, crafted more newsletters than clients. I can share best practice rooted in my landscape. A client can share the lifespan and hopes of the project. Whether you design, create, or make, it's similar. Clients don't need you to know their business the way they do. They need you to explore and explain it in the way only you can. So I'm going to tell you 2 quick stories about 2 long wars. You know words that you know how to say, but you don't know how to say? When I was teaching about Vietnam, I declared it a debacle. And this kid in the back raised his hand and he goes, I think you mean debacle. And I was like, oh no, actually you can pronounce it either way. I lied, because if I had flinched, the kid would have written me off, because that's what middle schoolers do. A year later, a couple kids were asking me about the Trojan War, and my Greece stuff is sketchy even today. I knew it involved a horse, but they wanted all kinds of details like who won. This time, maybe because it was a more casual setting, I panicked and I got really defensive and I yelled, you guys, I fucking bleed history. I should have said, the job of a historian is to know how to find it, not to necessarily know it. It's true in a creative job too. We're there to figure it out, not to necessarily know it from the start. Kids and clients can get under our skin. It's how we respond that matters. Sometimes you fake it, sometimes you confidently say, I don't know, and actually look more competent. Experience makes the difference. There were things I knew would be useful when I leapt to writing, such as liking to write. But this other stuff, like axes and empathy, I wish I could say I walked around cataloging those skills through my days, but I didn't. I'd argue that transferable skills are bulls to grab by their horns right now. How? Think about what you talk about. What anecdotes do you lean on to explain how or why you do something? What do your friends tell you talk about too much? What have colleagues or clients called out about how you do things differently? Where then did those things come from? You probably know you're good at what you do. This is one more way to differentiate yourself, to create a unique approach to work beyond a traditional one job title. We're all polymaths and hyphenates. Stefani spent time teaching. Bryan came to design via music, and Sandy was a web designer turned puzzle master. Every person has transferable skills, from playing a sport, navigating a marriage, or a previous career. The big lesson here is to make time to articulate what you got from where you were. There may not be a gold watch anymore, but that doesn't mean we're not golden. Thank you. I too have time for 2 questions. Yeah. It was pretty awesome. You know, I taught in private schools, so it was a curriculum we could design ourselves, and it oftentimes involved me having kids write questions on note cards, and then me just picking them from a box and answering them. And my husband's standing behind you. We read through some of those cards on one of our first dates. It's a good icebreaker. I still have them if anybody needs them. All right, thank you.
All right, awesome. So here we go. So, you meet somebody online, and you're pretty into them, and you decide that, you know, they're the one, and you're kind of feeling like, can you feel the love tonight? So, you decide you're going to meet up, and she's not your type. So, you know, but sometimes that's just the way things go, and you know, like Adele says, sometimes it lasts in love, but sometimes it hurts instead. So, why tell this story? Well, it deals with basic human emotions, and basic human emotions go really, really well into pop songs, because people who write pop songs need to get their feelings out so that people who listen to the radio have something to do. So this brings us to our thing today, how to write pop hooks. So that hook is that little like catchy thing that you get stuck in your head, you know, whether you're like at the dentist's office waiting to get a cavity filled, or you know, at a concert, you know, like, who let the dogs out? It's probably a bad example. But anyway, but yeah, pop music is everywhere, and just like design, it has very specific constraints and parameters, and they appeal to your emotions in a way because they send a message. So I think this is kind of why people either love them or discredit them. So first, when we're writing a pop song, we need a subject. So I think a great subject for us to use today will be Creative Mornings, because we're all familiar with it. We're emotionally invested. So then the next thing that we need to choose are some chords. So fortunately for us, there is a go-to chord progression in the pop world. It's called the 1-5-6-4 chord progression. I bet you've heard it a million times, including 2, because I already played 2 songs with it in there. Closing time, open all your doors, that song. Or the Beatles, when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me. That one, Let It Be. Or if you want to like kind of sap it up a little bit, you can do it backwards. Just ask John Legend. All of me. Yep. I don't know. So I don't know why the chord progression works so well, but it does. You'll just trust me on this. So next, we've got to pick some lyrics. So Creative Mornings. I need some lyrical ideas. You guys got anything? Verbs? Christmas. Christmas. Anything else? Donuts. Donuts is good.
Stickers.
All right. Doug is loving this stuff. I think we can work with some of that stuff. So, next up, we have to pick a melody. And the easiest way to pick a melody is if you just start on the root. Can everybody sing that? Let's try this. I'm so inspired. I've been eating donuts. Creative mornings. It's almost Christmas. Here we go. I'm so inspired. I've been eating donuts. Putting it all together. Creative mornings. It's almost Christmas. So there we go. So hopefully, that's really all it takes. Just ask Adele. So that's all, guys. Thank you so much. You've been wonderful. Oh yes, the 2-question drill. Anyone? Right there.
When's your band playing next?
So the question was, when is my band playing next? And the answer is undetermined, because we are currently in the process of writing our album, which is a very intensive process that it's hard to play and write at the same time, so we're hibernating. So we'll let you know. Just check out Sunjacket, our website, sunjacket.net, and all the stuff will be there. My first instrument was the piano. So parents, if you're thinking about starting your kids on something, piano. They'll hate it. That's the best part. So I started on piano. Oh, the question was, what instruments do I play now? So I started on piano. Then I kind of just had to pick up the saxophone in concert band in 5th grade. But the saxophone seemed really lame at the time, so I was like, guitar is way cooler. And then I started playing bass, which led to a little bit of drums, and I think that's about it. Thanks, guys.